Alright, in this video I want to share my perspective on how we could improve our ability to fact check using blockchains. Now, in order to really fully discuss this topic, I'm going to have to get a little bit philosophical, and we have to talk about what is a fact anyways. Okay, how do we know something is truth really? Okay, we're demanding at these platforms. We want better fact check and we want to know the truth. But what is that anyways? Okay, so in the first part of this video, I'm going to break it down the best I can and try and describe from my perspective, how do we know something is being fact? Okay, what is truth anyways? Once I've discussed that, then in the second part of the video, I will have laid a big enough foundation where we can actually talk about how we could use the blockchain in order to improve our ability to fact check, okay, and know truth through our media. So in this first part, when I'm talking about this, I first want to start with a short story, and then I'll try and give an analytical explanation. But I think the short story can describe things and sort of summarizes this whole topic in ways that sort of analytical explanation can. Okay, so I think it's a good story. It's called The Prince and the Magician. Once upon a time, there was a young prince who believed in all things but three. He did not believe in princesses, he did not believe in islands, and he did not believe in God. For his father, the king, told him that such things did not exist. And as there was no princesses or islands in his father's domains, and no sign of God, the young prince believed his father. But then one day the prince ran away from his palace, and he came to the next land, and there, to his astonishment, from every coast he saw islands, and on these islands strange and troubling creatures who he dared not name. And as he was searching for a boat, a man in full evening dress approached him on the shore. "Are those real islands?" asked the young prince. "Of course they are real islands," said the man in evening dress. "And those strange and troubling creatures? They're all genuine and authentic princesses." "Then God must also exist," cried the prince. "I am God," replied the man in full evening dress with a bow. The young prince returned home as quickly as he could. "So you are back," said his father the king. "I have seen islands, I have seen princesses, and I have seen God," said the prince reproachfully. The king was unmoved. "Neither real islands, nor real princesses, nor a real God exist." "But I saw them," said the prince. "Tell me how God was dressed," said the king. "God was in full evening dress." "Were the sleeves of his coat rolled back?" asked the king. The prince remembered that they had been, and the king smiled. "That is the uniform of a magician. You have been deceived." At this, the prince returned to the next land and went to the same shore, where once again he came upon the man in full evening dress. "My father, the king, has told me who you are," said the prince indignantly. "You deceived me last time, but not again. Now I know that those aren't real islands and real princesses because you are a magician." The man on the shore smiled. "It is you who are deceived, my boy. In your father's kingdom there are many islands and many princesses, but you are under your father's spell, so you cannot see them." The prince returned pensively home. When he saw his father, he looked him in the eyes. "Father, is it true that you are not a real king, but only a magician?" The king smiled and rolled back his sleeves. "Yes, my son, I am only a magician." "Then the man on the shore was God?" asked the prince. "The man on the shore was another magician," said the king. "I must know the real truth, the truth beyond magic." "There is no truth beyond magic," said the king. The prince was full of sadness. He said, "I will kill myself." The king by magic caused death to appear, and death stood in the door and beckoned to the prince. The prince shuddered, and then he remembered the beautiful but unreal islands and the unreal but beautiful princesses. "Very well," the prince said, "I can bear it." "You see, my son," said the king, "now you too can begin to be a magician." Okay, so what was that about? Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of things that we as human beings think of as being hard facts, right? like the number of countries there are in the world. Certainly that's a hard fact. Everybody agrees to it. You just gotta look it up. But actually it depends upon who you ask. So if you go to the United States and you say, how many countries are there in the world? They recognize something like 190 different countries. If you ask the United Nations, they recognize something like 240 different countries. So fact really depends upon who you ask. Okay, so if you look up fact in the dictionary, and I'm talking about the dictionary on macOS, which is kind of funny because it embodies this whole thing. Because if you look it up, you're going to get different definitions from different dictionaries. But let's say you look it up on the dictionary on macOS and you say, what is fact? The definition there is something that is known or proven to be true. Okay, a thing that is known or proven to be true. Okay, but here's the thing. In order to prove something to be true, a couple things have to be in place. First of all, you have to have shared perception. If I'm trying to prove that this pillow is blue, okay, to somebody who's blind, it's going to be impossible because they cannot see, right? They cannot see color. They don't even know what color is because they do not have vision. So it's going to be impossible to prove. So the two things you need to have in place are, number one, you have to have shared perception. And then number two, you have to have some framework or communication language that you're agreeing to, right? So if I'm saying that, let's call it a standard, you have to agree to a certain standard. Okay, so if I'm trying to prove that this is blue, then we first have to agree that this color is blue, right? In other words, in like a legal contract, you're first agreeing to definitions, right? The legal contract says when we use this word, we mean this. When we use this word, we mean this. When we use this word, we mean this. Because in order to actually fact check, you first have to get everybody to agree to a common framework or a common standard, okay? Common definitions. Okay, if I'm trying to prove that this is a certain length, we're first agreeing to inches and feet. Okay, we're first agreeing to that standard in order to fact check. So let me give you some examples of this. There's certain things in life that are very easy to fact check because there are a lot of perceivers and there is an agreed upon standard. A good example would be a sporting game. So in a sporting game, you have the audience, thousands of perceivers, and you have a very strict standard, which would be the rules of the game. So we know that if this player crosses this line, wearing this uniform, carrying this ball, then this team scores this many points. Okay, assuming there's this much time left in the quarter, et cetera, right? There's a very strict set of rules. And there's a lot of people that agree to those rules. And therefore you are able to extract fact or truth. Okay, we know the truth of who won that night. Well, it was, that team. Or we know the facts of how many points this player scored in this quarter during this season. Okay, the reason why we are able to extract those facts is because of that strict standard. Okay, if you interview people walking out of the stadium, everybody's going to agree on who won because they all agree to that standard. Okay, except that one delusional fan who doesn't know the rules and they're like, yeah, it was the other team, right? So when you have a lot of perceivers that agree to the same standard and the same set of rules, the same framework, the same definitions, whatever you want to call it, then you are able to extract fact and you are able to do fact checking. Okay. On the flip side, if you don't have people agree to the same standard, it's very difficult to fact check. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are interviewing people as they walk out of a catered dinner. Okay, everybody ate the exact same meal, and you are responsible for getting the facts of whether or not dinner was healthy or not. Okay, and so you ask people, was dinner healthy? Well, you're going to get a wildly different set of answers. Okay, unlike the sporting game where everybody agreed. At the dinner, you're going to get a wildly different set of answers of whether or not dinner was healthy. Okay, because everybody has a different standard for measuring what is healthy. Okay, they all have different definitions. The vegan person is going to give you a different answer than the paleo person, who's going to give you a different answer than the standard American diet person, right? Everybody's going to give you a different definition of whether or not dinner was healthy or not. So in order to fact check or know truth, you first have to get people agreeing to a common standard. Okay, but there are such wildly different perspectives of the world that your chance of getting everybody to agree to a common standard is going to be slim to none. Okay, and so I think the problem that we experience now with social media and fact checking and all this kind of stuff is that we've just put like 2 billion people into the same mixing pot, and we're trying to get everybody to agree to a certain standard. And that's just not going to happen. And not only that, but I don't think it is desirable to have it happen. Okay, and I want to give you an example from biology. So let's say that you are responsible for an orange orchard. Okay, and so you have to make sure it survives many generations and lasts long term. And so you have the choice. You can get everything the same, better for business because you can have consistency and people know what they're buying, they know the taste and all that kind of stuff. So you can get everybody to agree, or not everybody to agree, sorry, but you can just grow one set of orange, okay? So you have the choice. You can grow one set of orange, or you can have a variety of different types of orange. Okay, if you choose this, it's more convenient, it's easier to sell, you have consistency. If you choose this, okay, it's a little bit harder to sell because people don't know what they're getting. Are they going to need this variety or whatever? Especially if you have like more than 20 varieties of orange, it's going to be really complicated. Okay, but the thing is that if you have everybody on the same framework, or if you only grow one type of orange, and there is a bug that is able to crack the genetics of that orange, the entire orchard is going down. Okay, versus if you have varieties, they're going to crack this, but they're only going to get a part of your farm. Okay, it's like if somebody is able to crack the iOS of, or not the iOS, the OS of some operating system, like iOS or Windows or whatever, then if they know a bug in the operating system, they could take down all the computers that are running that operating system. But if we have a lot of different types of operating systems, some people are running iOS, some people are running macOS, some people are running Linux, some people are running Windows, right? Some people are running Android. By having a lot of different variety, then we're unable to take down everybody who's using computers, right? So in a similar way, if we are trying to get everybody to agree to a single standard so that we can fact check better, that's going to make us vulnerable. It's like getting everybody to agree to one operating system or one type of orange, and then as soon as somebody finds a vulnerability, everybody's going down. Okay, the entire orchard or the entire user base is vulnerable. So we want to have variety, okay, but at a certain, we want to also have convenience because it's easier if people are using the same operating system. It's easier to trade if everybody's using the same currency. It's easier to communicate if everybody agrees to the same definitions and has the same opinions on things. Okay, so there's this delicate balance that we have to strike where it's like, what do we want to get everybody to agree to? Okay, or do we even want to get everybody to agree to something? So in order to fact check, you first have to get consensus or agreement to a common standard. Once you have that, then you can extract facts. Okay, but if you don't have agreement, there's no way to fact check. So how does the blockchain help us fact check? Well, the first thing that we have to realize is that the blockchain itself is a certain standard, right? It's a set of rules that a bunch of people agree to. Okay, a bunch of computers agree to, and the people running those computers agree to that framework. So the blockchain itself kind of meets those two standards, right? When you create a smart contract and you publish it, everybody can perceive it, right? It's out in the public and you could say, okay, this is the smart contract. So you have a lot of perceivers and you have a standard within that smart contract, a set of rules, okay? And from that, you are able to extract facts. So you can see how much money this contract made, or you can verify that this contract posted this post at this time, okay, or whatever, because you have this public ledger with a lot of perceivers, right? And so the blockchain itself is like a fact-checking mechanism. Okay, originally it was built for currency, where we want to make sure the facts on how much money people have, right? And so we could actually use that framework for all sorts of things beyond just money though, right? So obviously things within the blockchain, like virtual items or tokens, or that you own this certain asset within a video game or digital stuff, that's all very easy to fact check, because you can see it and you see that this account is the owner of this because it's a shared standard, you have a lot of perceivers, everybody agrees to it. But can we improve our ability to fact check with the media? Okay, can we know that a certain event took place or whatever? So I think there's a few examples of how it could help. The first thing we have to recognize is that media itself has been getting better at fact checking. So in the past, you used to just have newspapers, right? And it was text, and it was this terrible thing, text itself is so ambiguous, you don't even know what's going on. A lot of room for interpretation and, bending the facts. But then we had, pictures, and then we had videos, and then we had videos that we could rewind, right? So we'd watch the news, but you could have a DVR where you could rewind it. And then we had YouTube and all these social media platforms where if it's some event, you have multiple people with their smartphone that are recording it, right? So if it's some public event or a concert or something, you can have there's hundreds of different cameras, there's hundreds of different perceivers. Okay, and remember, in order to have a fact, you have to have a lot of perceivers, okay, sharing the same perception, and then you have to have some standard that they agree to. So media itself has been getting better at fact checking. Okay, but what would be helpful is that we could verify authenticity. Okay, and this is what I think the blockchain can help us do in media. Okay, so there's a lot of things that can be photoshopped, right, where you don't even know that it's photoshopped. We now have deep fakes where people can superimpose, people's faces on other things. And you have artificial intelligence that can do audio in such good ways and replicate somebody's voice that it's really hard to even see if it's a machine or not that's saying that. So in order to know truth through our media, we have to have some way of verifying authenticity. And one of the things that the blockchain can do is help us with that. Okay, and I want to give an old example that will help people that are non-techie sort of understand how this would work. So back in the day when people used, they still use the post office, but when the post office was like a center of society, instead of us having email and all this kind of stuff, what people would do is if they patented something, then they would sketch it out, and then they would fold it up, put it in an envelope, lick the envelope, close the envelope, get the timestamp from the post office, and then they would just keep that sealed letter there as proof that they thought of this thing at this time, right? And so then they could pull it out as evidence and look, here's a sealed envelope that at this time I had sketched out all this stuff. Okay, so in a similar way with the blockchain, let's say that you film a video. What you can do is take that video, take a hash of that video, which is this kind of what you could look it up, and maybe I could explain it in another video of what a hash is. But you take this huge string of bits, zeros and ones, and you run it through a hash algorithm, and you get this very small string that if you run those bits through, you get the same string. But if you change one bit within this whole video, then the string is going to be different, right? So you can take a hash of that video, publish it to the blockchain, and then nobody knows what the hash is because nobody else has the video, right? But it's there on the blockchain. And then if somebody needs proof that they filmed this video at this time, they can pull out their video and they can run it through the same hashing algorithm and say, look, you know, I have the video that existed at this time on the blockchain, right? So you can do stuff like that where you can prove the authenticity of things. So if something gets photoshopped, well, you can pull out the original image, okay, and prove that this was original. This existed before this photoshopped image, and things like that. So there's all sorts of things we can do with fact checking. You could imagine that maybe security cameras, they might be filming some events, and then it automatically takes a hash of you know, every 5 minutes of the content, and it writes it to the blockchain, okay, or something like that. And then that'll help us prove that that security camera was actually filming that thing at that time versus some deep faked or, you know, CGI, whatever. Okay, but even still, it is worth acknowledging that you are agreeing to the framework of the blockchain, right? There's no such, we're never going to have perfect truth, because it's like what the king said in the short story, there is no truth beyond magic. And what is magic? Well, magic is agreeing to this framework. You're agreeing to this set of rules, okay? It's not the totality of experience, it's just this little box that we've created that we're all agreeing to. Okay, it's like a culture where we agree to certain ways of life, but then there's people on a different side of the planet that agree to totally different ways of life. They have a totally different box that they live in. Okay, or as a human being, we're, you know, in these bodies where we're seeing through eyes, we don't have taste and touch and smell, but there's dolphins that can use sonar beams and stuff that we can't even conceive of. So the ultimate truth, what is the truth beyond magic? Like that's you know, that's beyond the scope of humans. Like that's the totality, that's the experience of everything. You're not going to be able to ever, you know, prove that while you're in a human body or having a human experience. And so, you know, the blockchain could only do so much. It could only help us sort of prove these objective facts. And it's this little box that we've created and the set of rules that all these computers and all these people agree to. But within that, it gives us a nice framework where we can communicate and agree to certain things as cultures and as a planet and stuff like that. So you have this box, you can fact check, you can do all sorts of things. And I think that's pretty much all I got to say. I've been talking for like a long time. All right. So anyways, that's my thoughts on how we could improve the ability to fact check using blockchains. I talked philosophically about what a fact is. It's an agreement to a shared framework. First, you have to have shared perception, and then you're agreeing to a framework. And I talked about how the blockchains can improve our ability to fact check. First of all, we have to recognize that the blockchains themselves are frameworks that we agree to. Okay, but by doing it, like we agree to the post office being trustworthy, we can do things like when people used to write down an idea for a patent and then fold it up and get it timestamped. We can do that same thing where we take a hash of data and then can prove that something existed at a certain time, assuming you agree to the blockchain. Okay, and the rules of the blockchain are so complicated, and they do not let any one person have authority and this kind of stuff, that just like we used to trust in the post office, we can trust within these different blockchains. Okay, but I don't think it's a good idea to have everybody running the same blockchain or whatever. I think it's good that there's some variety. Okay, because if we had everybody agree to one thing, it's like the orange orchards, right? It makes us vulnerable. Okay, because if there's a vulnerability within those genetics, the entire thing is going down. Okay, and we do not want the entire human race to go down if they're all trusted in one thing. So we want to have different ways of being in different systems. All right, so thank you for watching this video. I will see you in another one.